So, I was reading this article the other day about new restrictions on a person's ability to have a safe and professionally administered abortion. Now, no one likes the idea of an abortion, but it got me thinking. I, and many others, believe abortion to be the lesser of two evils when you consider the alternative. That is, an unfit mother being forced to carry an unwanted child for 9 months, who once born will be ill cared for, probably placed under the ward of the state, but at this point the mother's life has already been irreparably damaged. And what if the child was the product of a rape? What if the child has major physical or mental deformities? All these things must be taken into account when it comes down to the topic of abortion. And this got me thinking about a way to logically determine the most appropriate time from which an abortion should no longer be permitted. A lot of people get very emotional when it comes to the topic of abortion, and they allow that emotion to influence their stance on the subject. So instead I tried to think of it purely logically, and I came to my conclusion indirectly actually. I began with questioning to what capacity original thought is actually possible. You see, I'm a studying programmer, and after learning a little bit about how a computer stores and interprets data, I determined that a brain probably works in a similar way. Now, I have absolutely no background in neuroscience, so this is a hypothesis based only on contemplating on how my own brain works. So, I had the idea that the brain is like a storage device that's capable of loading and writing data similar to a hard drive. The senses, sight, smell, touch, hearing, taste, and any other of the less obvious ones, they provide the raw data that is processed and stored by the brain. Anyway, I eventually came to the conclusion that the brain is only able to recall anything that one of our senses has experienced at some point in our lifetime. Let me explain. Imagine the brain is a database. You perform a search on your brain database whenever you think. Now, for testing purposes, I want you to think about bacon. What are the results of your internal search for bacon? First, you recall the sound of the word bacon. You've heard it before, your brain has a little file associated with the word that contains all of the experiences you've ever had related to bacon. You can recall the smell, the taste, the texture, the sound it makes when sizzling on a grill, what it looks like. In fact, the only information that your brain can comprehend on the subject of bacon is exactly what your senses have experienced. It may be obvious, but I want to point out that your brain doesn't actually know anything about bacon that isn't based on stimuli that your senses have picked up on. Now, you may be thinking, how can the brain create such great works of fiction, the likes of William Shakespeare or Tolkien, without ever having experienced what they're writing about in the first place? My answer to that is that the brain is capable of creating a new thought that is derived from two or more things it has already experienced. Now, I'll try to demonstrate this for you. Ready? Okay, imagine a blue car. Any car you like, just make sure that it's blue all over. Now, I want you to imagine the same car, only this time, I want you to make it green. Take your blue car and cover it in green paint. Did it work? Well, it did for me anyway, and I'm willing to bet it worked for you too, but that's an easy one. The point is, it works because the brain knows what the car is that you imagined, and it knows what green is, and it's able to combine these two attributes into a new thought that doesn't necessarily exist within reality. It's pretty amazing that you can try it with anything you like. The brain can take any number of attributes from any number of objects that it's already experienced and combine them into a new object. Now, finally, I'll try to prove to you, and I say prove with a great big asterisk on the end of it, because I know this isn't any real evidence for anything. But anyway, I'll show you why I think the brain is incapable of coming up with any completely original thoughts that aren't derived from past experiences. And I'll do this by expanding upon the previous example. Remember your nice green car that you'd thought up? Now, I want you to take on a real challenge this time. We're going to paint the car again, only this time, I want you to paint it a colour that you've never seen before. A colour that can't be witnessed or experienced by human eyes. You can't do it? Well, neither can I. Colours are the best example for this, I think, because of how the brain can create new thoughts by combining information that it already has stored. Although, your brain has already seen every single colour combination that there is. Therefore, it can't imagine any colour that it hasn't already seen, because our visible light spectrum is really quite narrow, and other certain species of animals supposedly can see colours that we can't. Again, I'm not an expert in this topic either, so you should take it with a grain of salt. So, by now I should have explained why I believe that the brain is, to a certain degree at least, incapable of completely original thought, and that it is rather more akin to a data storage and interpretation machine. And finally, this brings me all the way back to the subject of abortions. I believe that an appropriate cut-off time for the abortion period should be when the fetus can experience stimuli. This would mean that the brain has already begun storing and interpreting information. Before that point, it's essentially a completely empty bundle of cells with potential, but no value as a living thing. Well, that's my opinion anyway. So, right, tell me what you think in the comments. My mind is always open to be changed, so if you think you have a more convincing theory or would like to expand upon the content of this video in any way, I would love to read it. And thanks for watching my very first video.